Hello everybody and welcome to Nathan on Shuffle and to my latest episode of New Album Spotlight, the show where I put the spotlight out on new album and progressive rock that I think you guys will enjoy, and just me bringing attention to some of the great new prog that's out there that I think is just as good as the classics in the genre if you give it a chance and listen to it. For me, that's what excites me, is continually listening to new music that excites and entertains me. And I want to bring that to the people here who watch the channel, and hopefully down the line you get introduced to something that you fall in love with. So today's album that I'm talking about is Cyan and the new album Pictures from the Other Side. So this is a project from Robert Reed. The band was actually founded back in 1984, basically as a Robert Reed project to release his music under. He released the album for King and Country originally back in 1991 and released the original Pictures from the Other Side in 1994. So there were a few of these early albums that he released that were a little bit more independent and lesser developed perhaps, and weren't as polished as probably he would like. But he decided to basically reform the group a few years back, and they released a redone version of For King and Country back, I believe, either last year or the year before, 2021, I believe. A chance for him to re-record this material with a new, refreshed lineup, to add a few things to the sound, to make it more modern, to make it a little bit updated, and to really bring it more to life. And I think that's what he did with For King and Country. And now he decided to do that once again with his second album. So this is basically the second album for the reformed version of Cyan, and it is called Pictures from the Other Side. So the original version of this had a few extra tracks that aren't on this. It had a slightly different order, so it's not an exact replica of the original version, but I think it's a much improved version where they took kind of the best of what was on the original and redid it and made it a little bit more modern sounding and fresher. And I think it really works in its favor and creates a new album that is really solid and really fun to listen to. The lineup here is Robert Reed, of course, on keyboards and backing vocals. We've got Luke Macken on guitars, a really great, incredible guitarist. Peter Jones on lead vocals, saxophone, whistles. Peter Jones is a fantastic vocalist who can be heard in a lot of different projects. He guests on a lot of different albums. He also has his own project with Tiger Moth Tales. And then we've got Dan Nelson on bass, so a really cool, fantastic lineup. Also a lot of female vocals here from Angharad Bryn, I believe. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but yeah, some fantastic female vocals that pepper throughout the album and really added a great texture and a really fun sound to this band. So I really enjoy this record. It's really melodic, it's really accessible modern prog with a lot of great melodies, a little bit of a sprinkling of prog flavor to give it a little bit more of variety and excitement in the musical palette. But I think for the most part it lays in a pretty mellow prog lane. And maybe in certain stretches, it felt maybe a bit leaning too much into that mellow vibe, especially throughout the mid part of the album. Pictures from the Other Side, Solitary Angel, and Follow the Flow. Those tracks are all fairly mellow, laid back type tracks. There's little flourishes here and there that add some variety to the sound, but I felt that maybe they could have been reordered, or maybe something could have been done to bring a bit more energy and excitement throughout those tracks. But I'm always captivated by the sumptuous melodic vocals that keep you grounded and keep you entertained throughout the record. You know, Peter Jones is just a gem of a singer. And so even though some of those tracks feel a little bit more mellow for my taste, I'm always drawn in by the vocal performance and by hearing such great melodies. And it's just a gorgeous album that has a lot to enjoy and a lot to catch your ear. So I just think it's a really solid group of tracks. You start with The Broken Man, which opens with almost like an Irish or Scottish type setting with a bit of a bagpipe sound in the background before we get into that very smooth sounding melodic prog with those great buttery vocals from Peter Jones and those added sprinkles of those beautiful female vocals as well. There's some proggy moments throughout the track that bring an added energy to it. Robert Reed's Syrian synth leads come out on times, and you've got some blazing guitar solos. Some great groove comes out towards the end, and you get a slightly more upbeat and jazzier section with some soaring guitar over the top of it. So it's a varied track. It has a lot of cool features into it, even though at its core, it's a fairly straightforward melody that is really beautiful to listen to and enjoy. Then we get the title track, Pictures from the Other Side, some classical sounding harp at the beginning before the band kicks in with some saxophone lead and some 80s style keys. This one felt a little bit dated perhaps, but in some ways I like the nostalgia of it and the old kind of feel to it, this 80s style, which I think makes sense with how the original version of this was released in 1994, so it has a little bit of that older sound palette that you might have heard in the late 80s, early 90s, and I think that bleeds through here. Another pleasant pop-infused prog song, great melody, warm vocals. We get a bit of a jazzy instrumental breakdown that switches leads between sax and keys. But really you get this just breezy 80s inspired ballad that has a little bit of prog flourishes throughout. Ends with a bit of a proggy punch with some nice synth leads, but mostly a pretty laid back, breezy listen here. Solitary Angel is another one that starts a bit slower before we get into Peter's vocals. Almost a deeper kind of sound to Peter's vocals here in this interesting call and response style that he's doing, but the performance is just gorgeous. His voice is on point here. Much more slow and measured piece, but beautifully composed. Some great guitar leads and some great wailing female vocals and gorgeous guitar soloing towards the end add some emotion to this great ballad. And then Follow the Flow is another ballad. Some sweet piano leads to more gorgeous vocals. String sounds and female vocals waft through. It's a very short piece compared to everything else here, but it's a nice, slower type ballad to lead you into Tomorrow's Here Today, which has some acoustic guitar with some interesting darker twists to it. There's some melodic jazzy guitar lines over top before the vocals enter. More gorgeous sounds with light strings and great male and female harmony vocals. Once again, it starts a bit mellow, a little bit more of a ballad flavor to it. But as it continues forward, it starts to gather more weight and becomes a more proggier piece with more energy and excitement. You get some organ and mellotron adding some weight with female vocalizations before we get more of a jazzy key breakdown. Things shift pace with this fast instrumental section, giving a chance for some screaming leads between guitars and synths. That's really exciting to listen to. This gives way to more of a laid-back jazzy guitar amongst strumming guitar lines with Peter Jones vocals on top. Great musical build that gives everyone a chance to shine. You get some majestic guitar and key leads. So this is a really cool track that showcases all that's great about the band. More of that melodic, beautiful sound, but then they're able to stretch their legs a little bit instrumentally, giving some fireworks and some jazzier sounds. So this one's a really good song that leads into somewhat of the epic of the album, Nosferatu, which really takes a turn and is a totally different vibe in my mind. You know, it has more of a darker, spookier vibe to it. I mean, just the track title, Nosferatu, showcases what they're talking about here, you know, vampires and darker settings and things as they tell this tale. So you get some keys and layered orchestration to set this darker scene, get a more sinister and dark rocking vibe, spooky sounding synth leads, strange sound effects, almost like a campy horror type movie sound a little bit. You get some dark classical feel in the keys at times. You get Peter Jones doing this almost more sinister theatrical vocal during this piece. But there are moments where it shifts back into that more piano ballad-esque type feel with more emotional vocals over top, but it switches between that sort of feel and this more aggressive, you know, darker, spookier, proggy feel that's really fun. We get this kind of spooky boogie type feel with a funk blues groove, some great keys soloing, some infectious riffing with some 80s key stabs with Peter's vocals over top, a fun driving groove to it. Bluesy guitar riff leads us into the next section featuring keys orchestration and more beautiful female vocals. We get a classical fugue-inspired, quirky prog instrumental sound that almost leans towards this classic, Peter Gabriel era Genesis type sound with those Peter Jones vocals where he almost sounds a bit like Gabriel also, so it fits that mood really well. We get this slower, more majestic build with some soaring guitar leads, back to the upbeat prog bit with soaring synths before we close with those soaring vocals and a Halloween-esque orchestrated prog finale. So a really varied and interesting piece of music that goes through so many different styles and sounds and has kind of this spookier undertone, but some cool prog workouts, some funkier bits, some jazzier moments, but also moments for the melodies to really shine, for Peter's vocals to really come through during these more ballad-esque piano-type sections. So really a great work, and ends this album on a high note. So a really great album with some beautiful melodies, maybe a bit mellow and slow-paced in the midsection of the album, but it makes up for it with some of these bigger, more epic tracks that bookend the album. Broken Man, Tomorrow's Here Today, and Nosferatu are really great pieces that showcase a lot of variety and a lot of range for the band. And it's a lot of fun to listen to, and even the slower tracks, even the more ballad-esque moments are still beautiful and gorgeous, and just give a chance for Peter Jones to showcase his vocal prowess. He's one of the best in the business, in my opinion, with his vocals. He just has such a great quality, and so I could listen to it all day. It's just beautiful music, and I'd highly recommend it if you like this style prog. A bit more laid back, a bit more melodic. Think of those moments for like Big Big Train or something more like that. You don't get a lot of heaviness. You don't get a lot of, fast-paced workouts or things like that. But it's still a fun listen and a great ride, and definitely one I would recommend to fans of the same type of prog music that I enjoy. So thank you guys for joining me for this review. I hope you guys enjoyed it, got a feel for what the music's like, and hopefully we'll check it out when you have the chance. I believe the official release date is this upcoming Friday on the 17th, so that should be fun to look forward to. There's definitely ways to pre-order the album at this moment. That's probably the best way to find it. Hopefully should be available on something like Bandcamp in the near future, so definitely one to seek out and look out for. It's a great listen, and I really enjoyed it, and they're, of course, just fabulous musicians doing what they do best, and I can't get enough. So thank you guys for joining me. Hopefully you'll catch future episodes and future spotlights. I really enjoy doing these, and hopefully it's introducing you guys to some cool new music. So thank you guys so much, and I'll catch you hopefully in a future episode. Bye everybody!